Wizards must remain a mystery to muggles. So when I walk out into the middle of the street and perform meaningless miracles, no one stares out of their windows. Wizards must remain a mystery to muggles. So when I walk out into the middle of the street and perform meaningless miracles, no one stares out of their windows. Where's the scar on my forehead? It's okay, here it is. There's a brush on the door, but it's gone in 10 seconds. There are foreign wires sticking out from under my aunt's clothes. Harry Potter was born in 1980 and he's about to turn 11, which means it's 1991. However, the entire street is filled with second-generation Opel Vectra cars, which were first produced in 1995. Snakes can't wink. They don't have eyelids. In this frame, the snake has disappeared from its log, but in the next frame, it's back on the log. In this movie, night birds behave like daytime birds only during the day. The round seal on the envelope in Uncle Werner's hands becomes crooked and overlaps the logo. Owls bring letters that have already been cut with scissors so that Uncle can tear them up more easily. The Dursleys found a bunch of owls on the car and a bunch of letters on the ground not a second after they went outside, but as soon as they had enough kissing. Absolutely silent owls flap their wings like a flock of pigeons. Why do they jerk the cameras like the house is shaking? But then why doesn't anything move? And the fireplace would have fallen long ago. Why does Harry catch letters in the air when 1,000 of them appear under his feet? Until now, the Dursleys didn't give a damn about Harry. Now, in order to prevent him from becoming a wizard, they are willing to sacrifice their own lives by moving to a homeless shelter in the middle of the sea. Why is this a pointless endeavor? Whose hut is this? What is it even? Is it a solitary prison? What would they do if Hagrid hadn't taken Harry away? Would they have lived here long and happy lives and died one day? The best time to visit, according to Hagrid, is the first hour of the night. In a couple of minutes, lightning struck 50 or 70 times. For some reason, Hagrid is played by a completely different actor in some of the shots. And Nocturne Alley. Harry and Hagrid pass a sign with a pair of shears and a flower seller standing under it. Then they pass the place a second time, and then a third time. Hagrid's envelope is crumpled, while the goblin's envelope is perfectly smooth. Ollivander is testing all the wands to see if they're suitable, and everything should be in shambles. When the wizard finds the right wand, an epic lantern lights up on the ceiling and an epic fan turns on in the corner. And of course, this is just the third wand taken from a selection of 1,000, and it happens to be the same as Voldemort's. T's normal that Hagrid left the child alone at the train station with a bunch of junk, and a ticket for a non-existent platform. And if Harry hadn't accidentally stumbled upon the Weasley family, he wouldn't have been able to get on the train at all. Muggles shouldn't know anything about wizards, so let's make a passage to the secret platform in the middle of the Muggle train station. So you have to walk through the wall, and why doesn't any Muggle see this process? There are plenty of them around, and what's the point of getting to this platform like this? Hogwarts is in a parallel universe, but if it's in the same world, how does the wizard train get there? It appears in the air on the regular tracks when it leaves the station. And how does it align with the schedule of Muggle trains? What's the point of running through walls, when wizards could just as easily board their train in full view without arousing any suspicion? Yeah, the whole train was packed, and Harry Potter was the only one in the whole compartment. And why did Ron come here when there were mountains outside the window that weren't anywhere near London? He spent hours wandering through for carriages before deciding to ask for the only empty compartment. What's the deal with lollipops that taste like shit and are served to normal people? Harry Potter reads out the list of animals that can be brought to Hogwarts, and there is no rat on the list, even though Ron brought one. How did the toad that was lost by Neville on the train end up on the stairs? It must have landed on the platform, swum to Hogwarts, and jumped onto the stairs where the first-year students would be. Some of the students came on the same train as the newcomers, but they clearly didn't travel to Hogwarts with them. However, when the hero enters the hall, all the other students are already there. It must be very unpleasant when candle wax drips onto the plate and gets on your shirt. After being sorted into Gryffindor, Hermione runs off to the right, and Ron, who is also sorted into Gryffindor, goes in the opposite direction. The Slytherin house is a breeding ground for scoundrels who only encourage their vices. Dumbledore doesn't want to do anything about it, and he doesn't care that he has a whole house of potential Death Eaters under his nose. It's a complete coincidence that all the central characters, who had already met each other before the sorting process, were among the first to be placed under the hat. And it's no coincidence that the main trio conveniently ended up in the same group. The way the sorting hat works is that it determines the character of each first-year student, and it adjusts these conditions to ensure that, There are an equal number of new students in each house. Harry sat down next to Ron, and a few minutes later, for some reason, he was sitting next to Hermione, as if he had been sorted before her. The safety of children in Hogwarts put a huge bolt. Not only that they have here wandering stairs from which you can return, so that you can not collect bones. Not only that the deadly forest is at hand and a deadly game instead of football. Not only that flying on a broomstick is taught in such a way that after each lesson half of the students should go to the hospital with a broken spine. So also at every step there are brainless monsters meeting with which only by miracle does not end in a painful death. Welcome hope someone will live to see graduation. There were only 8 empty seats at the Gryffindor table, so there couldn't have been more than that. Why did Percy bring such a large group of people to the Gryffindor common room? There were about 20 people there, immediately after McGonagall's transformation. It is clearly visible that she is not wearing her glasses, but they appear in the same frame exactly 1 second later. Hogwarts doesn't teach any sciences other than magic, so all graduates must end up among muggles as complete ignoramuses who have never attended school. In the close-up, the words are written in small print and arranged in a column that spreads to the edges of the page. In a world where you can teleport anywhere, it's best to rely on slow-flying birds with minimal carrying capacity, as they're less likely to be noticed by muggles carrying suspicious packages in their beaks. Quite by accident, the Philosopher's Stone was attempted to be stolen from Gringotts immediately after Harry's arrival at Hogwarts. Why is this newspaper from 2001? Harry was born in 1990. If there were 8 first-year students at each of the 4 tables, that meant there were a total of 32 students, but for some reason there were only 26 of them in the flying class. Longbottom is lying a meter to the left of where his computer version landed. One of the students just almost broke his neck trying to fly on a broomstick. Of course, we should leave the other children unattended with their brooms. When the computerized Draco takes off, the students don't look at the place where he's drawn. I'd like to know why Draco and Harry are flying their brooms so calmly, when they've only been holding them for the first time 5 minutes ago. It's as if Draco launched that ball 200 meters away, and out of all the places in Hogwarts, he happened to choose McGonagall's office window. If you're not allowed to go somewhere, normal people lock their doors instead of leaving them open and then walking around, with a fierce expression on their face, asking, "Is anyone there?" Why do wizards completely ignore locks? Why not lock the hatch where the 3-headed dog is sleeping? Why make the door key fly around instead of carrying it in your pocket? The torches light up when the heroes run past, but the one closest to the viewer was quietly burning from the beginning. And they just turned up the gas, and now you've seen the 3-headed dog. But when they ran through the door a few seconds ago, you didn't notice it, even though the monster was right in front of the door. Gary was standing next to a paved path, and there was nothing but a lawn in the background. When Oliver rolls around on the grass, you can clearly see the mechanism sticking out of the field that pulls the chest with the balls. So that's how these candles are hanging on wires. It's called magic, and of course, out of all the places in the huge castle, the troll chose the one where Hermione was crying. Why isn't she using her wand? She doesn't have one with her. The door to the second stall is open, but in the next frame, it's closed. The wall is reaching down to the floor, and a second later, there's a large gap underneath. The floor around Hermione is covered with light, dry spots, but a second later, it's completely wet. The sound engineer did a great job of recording the sound of the club hitting the head, but he forgot to record the sound of the club hitting the floor. That is, the participants of the game are overstraining themselves to score balls. But as soon as they catch the snitch, victory is in their pocket. There are no more unfair rules that would better kill the spirit of competition in nature. The players' legs are attached to their brooms with some kind of wire. Just now, Hermione was on the other side of the huge stadium from Snape, and suddenly she was right under his stance in the few seconds it took for Harry to somersault in the air. The Gryffindor players should have rushed to Harry Potter's aid a long time ago, but they don't seem to care. The game is more important. Harry would have fallen off the broomstick if it weren't for the cables tightly wrapped with red duct tape. There aren't any snowflakes on Hagrid's hair, but in the next frame, it's covered in snow. What's the point of wearing an invisibility cloak when you're exposing a clearly visible lantern? How did the lantern end up on the cloak? It was just on the table where Harry had slammed it down. The hero is a head shorter than the adults, but for some reason, he looks at them from under his cloak. As if he were the same height as them, Snape randomly decided to threaten Squirrel exactly where Harry is wandering and exactly when he will pass by logic shoot. Students are forbidden to visit the dark forest under the threat of immediate expulsion, so we assign students punishments. in the form of go into the dark forest and even let them hang out there, without adult supervision in case no one will eat them from the villain's head to the unicorn's neck. There's at least half a meter, but he still sucks its blood like a mosquito. The multi-ton monster is so conveniently perched on the hatch that all it takes is moving its paw to gain access. The dog should have devoured the heroes the moment they woke up, but instead, it pretends to be asleep, then drools on Ron, bares its teeth, barks, and shakes its head as the heroes climb through the hatch. It's a formidable guard, ensuring that no one slips through. The dog's drool disappeared completely in a second. The shadow of the microphone is in the frame, and there's a stick sticking out of the broom handle that disappears a second later. What's that wire hanging from under Hermione's sweater? So it turns out that there are a lot of film errors and discrepancies with reality. But the movie turned out to be very cool, perfect for an evening viewing with the family. Well, thank you for watching. Give your likes and subscribe to the channel.